Hello, everyone. Ian with Good Virtual Reality here, joined by Shay Sosanya, the founder of Gravity Sketch. It's really cool to have you with me today. Why don't you tell us where you're tuned in from today?
Hey Ian, yeah, thanks for having me on the podcast. We're based in South London, Brixton. It's an area of South, like the last train stop on the Victoria line, if you're familiar with London geography.
And then why don't you give us your founding story?
Yeah, so my background is in industrial design and design for manufacturing. The majority of my career has been spent making physical products. So just under a decade making anything from furniture to laptops, even to tabletop kind of design elements and things like this for production or mass produced objects. And one of the things that always became a bit of a challenge was when discussing and negotiating the feasibility of a project with a fabricator or a supplier or a machine shop, staying in the flat realm, whether it's on screen or pen and paper, even if you do have a digital model, 3D model, it's always really difficult because there's a certain level of computation the brain needs to do in order to construct the missing dimension. And what I found was as soon as we get into the physical prototype or even just iteration one of the physical thing, so much information starts to come forward. And we're able to have these really deep conversations. And how can I get there faster was always the thing that was in the back of my mind. I just really want to get to this prototype. And if your project isn't selected, or if you may be blocked by a certain budget restriction, it's really hard to validate if your design is going to work in the real world. You have elements like ergonomics, you have elements like engineering as well as assembly. And that pushed me to go and do a whole thesis in London. My background is I'm American, born and raised in the West Coast, but I came here to study and I focused on a program that was joining engineering and design. And there I met my co founder, Daniela, who's a classically trained industrial designer. And so we wanted to team up and really think about how do we provide a platform that allows people from a variety of different backgrounds to collaborate, communicate directly as they naturally would around a physical prototype, but in a virtual space. And our whole thesis was how do we get our ideas out of our head as fast as possible? Right around that time, platforms like Unity were really opening up for broader use cases beyond just gaming. And we saw the Oculus DK1 drop, and we quickly grabbed one of those and just started developing on this platform. And we always thought that, surely someone like Autodesk or Adobe or one of these big software companies would come around and create a platform or product that would really help accelerate this for designers because our passion was always making things. And so we didn't really pursue it for the first couple years. We focused on treating this almost as a hobby. We're talking about 2014, 2015, and we worked at Jaguar Land Rover as interior designers, where we learned a ton of stuff about the industry and also just how important it is to have a solution like this because now you're dealing with a vehicle which has safety requirements as well as assembly as well as engineering as well as ergonomics, but nothing ever really came. And when the CV1 came out, obviously Facebook acquired Oculus, now Meta, it was really clear that okay, this price point for what you're getting, for what potentially this could be, is just incredible for the design world, for the engineering world, for anyone that makes physical products. And we went all in, left our jobs, bootstrapped for a couple of years, and eventually got some funding from venture capitalists here in the UK and started building it with our community. So, yeah, there's like a lot more nuances to the journey, but it was a very long journey of passionate about physical product and development and finding other like-minded people that were passionate about it. So a little bit less on the technology side. I never was one that would really rush at the latest, greatest technology and build something for that sake, but really around the problem. And the problem was how do we visualize things that have yet to be materialized in a digital space natively as like a human would normally do that?
I know Walkabout Mini Golf, Mighty Coconut is one of your customers that is one of the few customers that I guess is outside of the physical fabrication sort of area, so that it's also used for that sort of purpose as well. Can you walk? So that's all from 2016 to now is quite a long time. So why don't you walk us through what Gravity Sketch is as it is today?
Yeah. So the genesis of what we wanted to be and what we are today are not, there's not too dissimilar. Essentially, our mission statement has been to help people bring better products to life. And with the example that you mentioned around Mighty Coconut and Walkabout Mini Golf, that is a product. Now, our expertise and domain expertise is in the physical space. So obviously, we're focused on there. And I feel as a startup in this space, you have to be ultra focused. But our free product, as well as the tiered pricing that we've introduced over the years, has all been in the spirit of being inclusive to all the other types of products that can be developed. And even beyond, we see academics using this to plan out things spatially at the sub millimeter level. But Gravity Sketch, essentially, in a nutshell, is an immersive 3D design and collaboration platform. So it's allowing teams to create, review, and communicate around an idea, in our case, or in our customer's case, mainly a product in a more natural spatial way. And what this does is it opens the aperture of the project to other stakeholders at a much earlier stage in the process. So traditionally, you'd wait until you have a really polished deck, or even better, a polished prototype before you start bringing in people like material specialists or ergonomic specialists, or in our footwear example, athletes, to evaluate and assess the design. So by bringing folks in earlier, you can imagine that you get some of these critical decisions discussed and decided on and also committed to much earlier, which gives you more time in the back end for things like preparing for your campaign or preparing for your launch or even launching additional colorways of a product. And by remaining in 3D and staying 3D throughout the process, you also get a better product at the end that's more true to the initial design intent or the brief that was initially rolled out. Now, what we do as well is we feed into downstream tools. So it's not a one-stop shop for everything. We don't ever really imagine being something like that. And we think those platforms become bloated quite quickly and might lose a little bit of the magic of being able to have this really intuitive, straightforward experience. So we have decided to do a lot of cloud computing on the back end. So beyond VR, you also have Gravity Sketch Web, which allows you to send things for data migration or translation, as well as bringing things into the product via a variety of different file formats. So we're able to serve as a hub between maybe a rough napkin sketch and your final model that's spec'd for fabrication. And so feeding into downstream CAD tools via various file formats. And now with the rise of AI, we're also supporting customers who want to bring in generative assets and continue to work and develop those generate assets in a virtual reality environment.
I wanted to understand more about the company. I want to understand what's the size of the company. And you mentioned UK based investors. Who are your investors and what is the size of the company today?
Yeah, I guess in headcount, we're 44 people. We have our biggest customer is multi-million dollar account in the automotive space. We have about 75 customers that are at the enterprise level, kind of countless at the prosumer level. And then, yeah, it's really hard to put an exact number on how many in the free space because we have so many downloads on a regular basis. And so that's quite a wide spectrum, but we're really laser focused on those use cases that drive return on investment, all while staying inclusive of our community who are exploring and experimenting with the product. And in terms of investment, you can imagine when we first set off on this journey, it was a very nascent space. And to some effects, what we're doing specifically in the space it still is relatively nascent. Essentially, we are creating a platform that is allowing discussions around 3D products to be happening and pushing them downstream, which isn't anything that any of the major hardware platforms are really promoting. So this is something that's kind of unique and onto its own. And so with that, you do need to raise capital. And what we did was we decided like ourselves first to be the first investors, if that makes sense. And so working at Jaguar Land Rover, we started to roll down our hours and spend more time on this project as well as our savings injecting into it. And I feel that this is really important for any founder in the space. Maybe a bit of a tip to people that are looking at getting into this space, or even just a founder of any company in general. I find that being the first investor of your company mentally is really important. So we spent a lot of time really understanding the value proposition that we would be able to drive once this hardware and the broader ecosystem reaches full saturation. And we did that through back of the envelope cost analysis of physical prototypes, primarily in the automotive space. So every vehicle that's made today goes through a process of design and refinement, and eventually a full scale clay model is made. Now, that model is initially digitally milled, and then it's hand sculpted to meet the specifications of the design team. That process in total is about 25, oh, sorry, $250,000. And so for us, if we can reduce one or two of those per vehicle program, we could save a company a tremendous amount of cash and would actually justify the cost of our software, the projected cost of our software. And so that was like really our own mental investment as well as our own savings invested into the company. And so it made the process of talking to investors a lot easier because we had already solved a lot of the hesitation and critical points that an investor might make back to us. And so with that, we were able to go to market, meaning like going out to raise investment with this thesis around how much we can save customers per project that they're rolling Gravity Sketch out on. That being said, it was still very hard. We pitched to about 54 investors here in the UK initially via various platforms and accelerators. This is pre the pandemic, this 2017. And pretty much all of them said no. We had one yes, which was really interesting from a local VC here, Forward Partners, which is now Molten. And from that, we built for another 2 years and we were able to bring in other proper seed investors like Point Nine and Kindred Capital. And that was kind of the pre-seed and seed rounds that we've done. And our most recent round was our Series A in 2022, where we raised money from Excel and Google Ventures, as well as brought on a variety of different angels. Most notable, Serena Williams joined the journey, which was really interesting. Yeah, it was the biggest round that we've raised to date, and also was a great test to see if we can push the market faster through injecting a bit more cash into our marketing and go to market motion.
How do you think about competition and focus? How did you not sort of go in a million different directions and stay on this idea? And did you ever feel threatened by others who might be digging into this space as well?
Yeah. How do I think about competition? Competition is healthy. I feel that every great team, every great company, every great person, I guess, in our modern history has faced competition and has thrived within the competitive landscape. And beyond just a company, I find myself as a quite competitive person in the sense of I want to do better in anything I'm doing than the person adjacent next to me, but not at the sacrifice of my own morals, for example. But also, I think that through competition, we're learning from one another and we're driving the whole market forward. So from the beginning, I've actually, and even today, I've actually always been a little bit sad that we don't have more competition in the space, especially from some of the bigger incumbents like Adobe. They acquired Medium and converted that to Substance 3D. And right now, I don't really see much of it. I don't see a big push. Autodesk as well had Create VR. I also don't see a big push on that. And it's one of those things that as the tide rises, all ships rise with it. And I really would love to see more competition in the space. And I don't really see it as oh no, someone's going to eat our lunch. I feel like it's a great motivator for our team, for myself. It's a great learning. Competitors are often doing things that you didn't think to do, and you're often doing things that they don't think to do. And you're learning from one another, pushing each other forward. And also, when I get on a call with customers, they actually have something to benchmark our product against. And so I'm
Mhm.
always really keen to see more people getting in the space. And everyone that I have seen get in the space, I've directly reached out and tried to create a relationship with them. I'm really proud to have a relationship with Inga at Shapes XR, where there is maybe a competitive angle to it, but not necessarily a direct competition. But yeah, anyone that's like really decided to take a stab at this, I'm infinitely supportive of them in any way I can. And
Yeah.
I feel that this space is big enough. If you look at any product on an iPad for creativity. Just type in creativity on the iPad in the App Store and you'll see thousands of applications. Now, if you do the same thing on the Meta platform or Steam, maybe six at most. So I feel this is still an emerging market. I feel we got to all pull together, and we really have to think about this as we're helping push each other forward. Imagine any sports league with only six teams. Maybe that's the best way of looking at it. And a sports league with six teams, yeah, is there really is it really a big enough fan base for that? And I would say probably not. It's still an emerging sport that needs to grow more, and that's where I think we are right now with our particular niche in this space.
Interesting. Yeah, we're talking here, Rec Room announced its shutdown within like 12 hours of our conversation here, and they're kind of that's 10 years in VR as well. They're just as old as you as a company. And I was talking to Andrew Ike over at Alchemy Labs, and he was announcing they've got their next dimension coming for Dimensional Double Shift, a hand tracking game next month. And he was saying that his vision for VR is co-present by default. This idea that you're always sharing with another person. You're always seeing the same things, sort of in the same space. And I find that interesting when I think about the multiplayer that's kind of default inside of Gravity Sketch. Am I right in that basically all of your creations, people can get in there and get together pretty fast across the board?
Yeah, we've decided to make that the default. Definitely. You can obviously make drafts, but we're thinking of it more along the lines of if you create a whiteboarding or a whiteboard in one of these whiteboarding platforms, you always have a share button in the top corner, and you could decide if that's shared or not shared. Or any Google document, for example, you have a share button in the top corner. You could decide that's shared or not shared. Now, historically, you had to convert a file into a shared file. So we've had the multiplayer aspect of Gravity Sketch for many years now, but never brought that to front and center. And so now by default, when you create a space in Gravity Sketch, we call these rooms, you will always have the ability to share off the cuff. And you could decide intentionally to create a draft at the beginning, but our default will be to create a space. And what we found was that retention increases by 2x if someone has a collaborative moment in their first month of using our product. And if they have another collaborative moment, retention increases by 3x. So two collaborative moments really solidify someone's ability to get value out of our platform. And when we go back to our original thesis, or our mission statement, I should say, it's always been around helping people bring better products to market or better products to life. And the people is a multiple there, right? It's not a single individual creating a really great asset and then shipping that to another tool, but actually bringing people together to be co-present and understand some of the ramifications of the decisions that they're making, whether it's engineering or design decisions. So yeah, it's extremely important to have this co-located virtually co-located moment with another human being, and I feel it brings the technology really to life, what it's actually able to achieve and do.
Those data points are gold. I mean, they're so valuable to anyone that would be listening to this to understand why it really kind of sucks to jump into a headset and be cut off from the universe, cut off from every other person. And you've got real data there that shows that actually you keep people in designing with your software by a very significant amount each time they jump in with another person. How fantastic it is to get that data point. So thank you for that. And that's a good transition, I think, to talking about the future and kind of why I alluded to mentioning Rec Room here, shutting down. Horizon Worlds just had its big shift. Now, these platforms were like, let's connect you with random people and see if you can like have an emergent experience finding random people on the internet. And I don't know, that's a lot of data there that's not a successful thing. Your work, Gravity Sketch, is kind of at the opposite end of that, where those collaborative experiences are going to be people probably that you know in the physical world. You're sort of transitioning that into a digital space and sort of pulling people into these projects to do very high value work, things that are going to really matter over the long term. And I guess I want to ask you this very broad question and see where it goes. Of what do you think VR needs for mainstream adoption, and how far away do you think that is?
Yeah, wow. That's a big question, very broad question as well. Maybe I can summarize it in 3 points, and there might be a fourth in here, I'm not sure. I'm just trying to piece everything together in my head here. I feel right now there's nothing stopping us from rolling out this as a mainstream tool. Obviously, when I talk about competition earlier, if I buy a headset that I'm only using with one software, that's a really hard ask to ask of anyone. I don't think any technology product that you have right now is only used with one piece of software. Maybe a Kindle or something like that, but it's plugged into an ecosystem that's full of, a vibrant community of people producing and publishing things. So workflow is the most important thing. That's the number one thing if you want to roll this out wider. And it's in its current state, I'll talk about the device itself, but in its current state, it's totally usable. We are on probably the 50th shoe that's been developed and sent to market directly out of Gravity Sketch that we know of. There's been multiple vehicles that have been developed and pushed to market using Gravity Sketch. There's been plenty of different entertainment, whether it be movies or games, as you mentioned. And what all of these customers that we have really nailed is the workflow. So they've been able to find exactly where these collaborative moments are critical for clear communication. And they've decided how they want to train their teams. They've leaned into what the return on investment of that training will be, and they've decided to systemically roll that out within their organization. Now that is a big ask because the time and investment of upskilling often comes at an executive level where they are deciding that they want to do this. Now, you can imagine that someone that is maybe a little bit further on in their career, they may not want to take that level of risk where they're trying something completely new and they're only years away, potentially years away from retirement. So they want to continue with the hits based on the workflow that they've already mastered with their team. But anyone that is ambitious and does want to push beyond the status quo and significantly, not marginally. I think all of these leaders in the design space are incredible leaders for what they need to do in terms of bringing a vehicle to market or a shoe to market. But you can get marginal returns, but you can get kind of really transformational returns by trying to really shake up the status quo. And that has reverberating effects. So workflow is not a small one. It's a massive one because when it comes to creating a product, and let's say, for example, physical product, you then have supply chain. You then have factory partners. There's loads of different folks that are all invested in the development and design that you're doing at the very front end. And so with some of our footwear customers, we've actually spent a lot of time in Asia, Vietnam, China, Taiwan, Korea with factories to help the factories get familiar with the technology as well. And I must commend these leaders who have decided to take a stab at this and really probably build their career around a new way of working because it is a big commitment from them. And so this workflow component is really important. And I think the only way it could be mainstream is if we get more of these stories out and we de-risk it for others in the space. So right now we're working with roughly a dozen footwear companies. There's plenty more that we could be working with, but we only have a handful of stories that we're able to share publicly. And so the more that we're able to unlock some of these public stories, I feel the more that it will de-risk footwear companies that may not have a deep budget to actually go through this transformation process. But also if we can publish more of these workflows, that also helps people really de-risk it with their teams and with their other additional executives or even their finance team. So workflow is like component number one for sure. I would say the next component is definitely the hardware. We can talk all the tropes like the hardware needs to become lighter, more comfortable, socially acceptable. I think there's a lot of stuff there, but ultimately there is always going to be this challenge around putting something on your face that is obstructing the sense that you depend on most. Like for the majority of our lives, we rely on our vision. Like vision helps us with everything. We don't need to touch or taste or smell things if we can see them. I mean, we do still, but our first thing is looking at it and really trying to pattern match with things that we've seen historically. And so by covering that vision, you're really asking a lot of a user. And I don't see any real way of getting around this I like this AR first that a lot of products are taking, like the Apple Vision Pro is an AR first device, but you still have this element of like trusting what the device is giving you, and that's a subconscious thing that you really need to push through. I think workflow offsets that because the reward that you could get in turn for putting this device on your face is really high when it comes to making a product. But yeah, there's a lot there. I feel that there's elements of easing into this through maybe other platforms like AR on the iPad or on the phone. You know, if you're in a collaborative session with Gravity Sketch and someone hops in from their phone or their iPad and they see someone else in VR, they might wonder what VR is like. And that kind of starts to ease the tension rather than just jumping in 2 feet at a time. And on the technology spectrum as well, I feel if we are really going to get lighter and more comfortable devices, there's obviously a bandwidth thing. So, could we stream content faster, more reliably to a device with lower latency? Would that reduce the weight of the device where the some of the computation is taking off the device? Again, I really like what Apple Vision Pro is trying to do with the splitting of the chip for processing all the tracking and sensor information from the chip that's processing the actual application. And I can even imagine the future that you just have a chip on board for processing all the tracking information and everything else is streamed to the device. So like, and I think there was something that was mentioned about working with NVIDIA on this as well. So I think that's really interesting. And then the last one for me, number three really is around the ecosystem. So how does this hardware play into all the other devices that you have and all the other software that you have? And I feel you have to have a vibrant group of products that are on this device, but also this device can play with the other products in the space. Again, I have to mention Apple here, and it's not that I'm Apple champion in the space. It's just that they've done a really great job of this ecosystem approach, where if you have a brand new device in a brand new category that's within the product ecosystem that they have, it kind of fits in nicely. I could put my headphones in and it connects automatically with any device that's picking up. Now we need that same level of connectivity between devices when it comes to our virtual reality hardware. And I think Android XR is a really promising step forward in that. In addition, again, as I mentioned earlier, you don't really want to buy a device that's only used for one software. So could there be workflows that are carried out throughout this hardware? Or does this hardware live at the desk for someone that's doing their work and it becomes their third monitor? So I always work with two monitors, but is my third monitor a window into the 3D world? And so I use that periodically when I need to jump in and check something out. And so thinking about how other softwares can tie into this, and a good analogy I use is like we would never use any kind of messaging app at our company that wasn't mobile friendly, although we do a lot of our messaging on our desktops. And I think that's like the same way we have to think about these emerging hardware. We're in a transitional period where we can't just throw the phone out the window and say, I'm now going to put this hardware on my face and that's going to drive everything. It's a slow, gradual adoption of these things. So yeah, I think it's coming, but there's split across so many different stakeholders, the hardware manufacturer, the service provider, the developers, it's really who's gonna try to pull everyone together. Yeah. I think there's still something to be done there. Some of the bigger organizations could do it. It's just about the level of, like I said, the appetite of risk they have to really commit themselves to this. And I commend Meta for putting so much time and energy and investment into the space. They really helped to launch it to where we are today, but there's still a lot of work to be done.
Yeah. So a lot of interesting things to go off of from what you just said. I guess I'm curious, when you travel, do you travel with a headset? And if you do, which one is it? Physically, like, yeah, how do you travel with your computers and give those demos to potential new customers?
Yeah, we're fortunate enough to have quite a few customers that have already committed themselves to exploring VR. So they often will have a device and we try to match the device with what they have with what we travel with. So right now, most of our customers are on the Meta Quest 3, or at least they're transitioning to the Meta Quest 3. So we try to meet customers with the Meta Quest 3. We find that if you have a different device than what the customer has, when you are exploring a use case or demoing something, any kind of small difference could make it like unnecessarily complicated to to explain or to walk through. Now, we started to look at other products in the space that customers are also curious about, but right now the main one that's kind of proliferate across all of our platforms for all of our customers is the Meta platform. So we travel primarily with the Meta Quest 3. We're traveling a lot now with the Apple Vision Pro. A lot of our customers are keen on the optics and how crisp you can get from that device, but also how it fits into their Mac ecosystem. And then yeah, we just I mean pack it up in a travel case or um, I sometimes use like my clothes to kind of pack it together and then I seal it up in a mesh bag. There's a couple of different ways. Obviously, traveling around Europe, you're really restricted with how much you can carry on the plane, so you have to be creative.
Mm. I was trying to paint a picture there of like if you're on the flight, are you using VR for pleasure, or is it something that sticks in your carry on and you pull it out when you get to the meeting type thing?
Yeah, I mean, maybe like the at the airport at the gate, I might just tighten something up for a presentation. I try to present always through the product, so I'm always thinking about how we show our product through the product rather than slideshow. So even like uploading slides into the collaborative space and just walking through those slides is really important. So I might do a little bit of tightening up, but I rarely use VR for entertainment purposes. I feel that there's still a long way to go in that space as well. I feel like there hasn't really been a strong push into AR, VR first entertainment. So often what we're doing is we're visualizing maybe a slightly bigger screen content that was generated and made for the 2D screen. So I'm kind of a purist in that sense. Like if it was filmed for 2D, I'd rather just watch it in 2D. But yeah, like, from an entertainment perspective, I think there's so much to be done there that's so exciting. I think about looking at some of the younger people on our platform and how they're really pushing the limits of our tool. And I'm just wondering how they're going to consume media in the future. I feel like they're probably going to produce and consume media in the future that's native to the platform.
There's so many different moving pieces here. You already walked through sort of the ecosystem and how everything needs to change. I'm a big fan of the Vision Pro and the quality of the screen, and I have gone to both ends of the spectrum here, where I'll often bring the Vision Pro with me during travel, but I won't actually use it, and it's kind of like I want it there just in case, but it's also a heavy thing to pull out. So, like, I'm sitting there on a flight, and I've got two choices there. I can pull out the headset and put it on my head like a hat and watch a movie on this giant screen and disappear sort of. I've been in this situation where I've been in the middle seat, right, between a person on my left and a person on my right, and sort of sandwiched in there. Go to the virtual theater there and make a giant screen that's as large as a cinema and sort of just disappear there for 2.5 hours. And the moment the wheels are up to the moment the wheels are down back on the ground again, I'm in a cinema and I've forgotten the sort of sardine can seating arrangement that I've been forced into. But it's also a very heavy lift. I've got to get extra battery ready to go. I've got to get everything packed just right in order to be able to pull it out in that sardine can situation. And so I find myself very often watching movies or yeah, just doing a normal phone or a tablet rather than being able to pop out the headset and do it the way I described. So it's to your point earlier, there's a lot to do there to just ease the use of the headset for those various purposes. Uh, and on that same front, I'm not going to take the PlayStation VR 2 controllers with me anywhere. Those big ringed monsters are simply not going to travel. So I don't have, if I wanted to do creation with the headset while sitting in that scenario of like on the flight or even in the terminal or anywhere else, it's just I don't have my precision input with me on the Vision Pro. And so, like last weekend, I was at a jigsaw puzzling competition where a developer was bringing their VR version of jigsaw puzzling to the convention, and I brought a Quest 3 with me, and I was torn because I really wanted to take the Vision Pro so I could have my entertainment the way I prefer it. But I brought the Quest 3, and I'm going out to this event, and um, I'm trying to log in with co-presence to these people who are experiencing VR for the first time. and like really, uh, really loving it, really discovering the joy of mixed reality in a VR headset and puzzling for the first time with family members or dear friends. And so like I've got my bag there and the two controllers are in the bag and I have to take the battery out of one of the controllers so that it doesn't activate when it's inside the bag. And so I have one controller out that I want to use for the precision input and then I've got my hand tracked by the headset. So I've got one open hand and one controller tracked. And then I'm able to I've got this amazing scenario here where I could walk around and film these people who are experiencing jigsaw puzzles for the first time while keeping a controller in my back pocket that has no ring on it. And just being able to pop it out at any time and then like interact with menus or pull pieces over to me that are far away. um, it was really neat. It was really amazing to kind of like I brought a bunch of battery packs so I didn't run out of power, but also just I'm one of the most experienced people in the world at all of these different types of VR headsets that are available to me, and no one product does everything that I really needed to do. There's all these hangups left and right that are still like a tremendous pain. Like it's ridiculous to being like wanting to use your left hand, my dominant hand, but it keeps trying to connect to the controller that's still in the bag. And then the headset I would prefer, right? I can't take that because it's got these big rings on the controllers in order to do the same darn thing that I'm trying to do with the other device. So like we're both in the same place, I think, here on just it always feels like we're so close to sort of the dream product, but it still ends up being far away. Like, am I wrong on that? Like, how do you feel it getting closer?
Yeah, the dream product is it's a difficult one because there's different permutations of it. So in your use case, I think there's like all those use cases are really valid. Like if I want to share it with someone, but I don't need one controller, but I don't want that controller on a battery. It's like, yeah, that's like totally a difficult difficult situation that you're put in. But if there's a use case where it's permanently on my desk or it's primarily on my desk, I probably don't need as much onboarding computing if I can pull from my PC or in the future even pull from my Mac. So, what does the landscape of hardware look like? And I'm wondering if it's one piece of hardware that has to kill everything, if that makes sense. Or could you
Mm,
could
yeah.
you pick very much like you pick your phone or you pick your laptop or even your tablet? Could you pick the thing that's really suitable for your use case or even have a couple that are suitable for different use cases? That's like an area that I think is really promising with Android XR because it opens the aperture to people that can get into the space and it just lowers the barrier. Like I don't have to think about the OS layer right now. I could just think about a very workflow specific. When I'm in the studio, I'd love to just have a very lightweight headset with inside out tracking and like great simple controllers that I can just put down and pick up anytime I want. Maybe even a docking station and I still use the Rift S, for example, because it's lighter than the Quest 3. The visuals are really dated, but, the controllers are pretty much the same mapping as all of the rest of the controllers in the ecosystem, and it just cables into my PC. I take it off. It knows when my eyes aren't in the headset anymore. But I would love for that to be much smaller. I would love that for it to be a little bit more comfortable. I'd love to have a little bit more access to my peripheral vision with maybe a different face shield. But yeah, it's a dated piece of technology that I'm always worried that it will stop getting support for one day, which really scares me. So that's one aspect, and then when I'm on the road, I wanna have something that's a bit lighter, that doesn't shut down all the time, it doesn't stay awake all the time, um, it kind of somehow is there and ready to be woken up when I need it. It also has the headroom to load really complicated rooms and models. And, I don't know what that looks like yet either. So it's almost like the mobile versus the desktop version. I think there's a real justification for these two worlds. But many customers are trying to, or sorry, many of the providers are trying to bundle this into one or picking one lane or the other, or trying to do both, but not doing both to the level that they could. Like I think about HTC, they've gone in both directions where they try to do mobile and they tried to do the tethered, but I feel like maybe landing on one and being hyper focused on it and really nailing it could be really incredible. Or I like big screen beyond. However, I really do need the inside out tracking because there's so many obstructions in our space to have the lighthouses, right? And so like there's just like you're right. There's like all these little combinations of hardware. So I think all the ingredients are almost there. It's just trying to piece these all together is really where the challenge is right now.
I love it. I love it. So I've got one question here that I want to close out on here in a minute. Um, but before I get to that question, I wanted to ask real quick, does Gravity Sketch or did Gravity Sketch run on HoloLens or Magic Leap? And did you find any uptake with that architecture for display, or was it just no?
I mean, we took a punt at both of them. So I can say today with 100% confidence, every piece of technology that's come out that has 6 degrees of freedom, we've, and even some with 3 degrees, we've really done our best to try and port Gravity Sketch over to. We were even early days, Samsung Gear VR. We actually had a version that we would connect with the Samsung tablet and you can almost like sketch on the, well, you could sketch on the tablet and you can kind of rotate the tablet and that was like your input device. And the Samsung Gear VR would pick it up as well and kind of locate the two. So we've always done like really hardcore R&D to see what's possible. And that's no different for HoloLens or Magic Leap. We spent 3 trips to Florida on site with Magic Leap, really trying to dive into getting this to run. And the hardware had its challenges. I would say the biggest challenge for us that we couldn't wrap our head around was really the field of view and the input. Like we just didn't have the level of precision we needed from the input. And we did that just like kind of lowered the confidence in deploying on that product. And
Mm,
similarly to the HoloLens, I love this kind of gesture and hands. I think it's like a really interesting and we can go so deep with that input modality. But even in the real world, creative individuals, engineers, even the common person, like in the kitchen, we use tools to extend our human potential. And so by not having really great tools to work with, you start to limit the ability to get that magic moment in the virtual space because what you're doing is kind of waving your hands around and moving your head. But if you can input something and hold a tool that feels familiar and get that level of precision out, that's really transformative. Even think about modern computing. Like I don't navigate my computer with my finger. Even with a touchscreen computer, I'm still using my keyboard, my trackpad, my mouse. Like I'm using peripherals that really help drive like a more focused kind of navigation through the interface. And so I feel like these were amazing products and really interesting technology. But as you said, we're almost we were like almost there each time. And AR is just an infinitely more challenging problem to solve because you have the lights and the darks. If you're in a dark room, if you're in a room with high exposure in the sun, there's just so many different challenges that you have to work around. So we just never really got there with that. And I feel the current day status with AR is probably better suited for our current use cases where you're consuming AR through the cameras. It's obviously not the magic vision of the future that we all aspire to have. It's a realistic, scalable technology that we can do right now and deploy right now, which I think is really promising. So I'm still hopeful of what these devices could bring. We're really excited about what they were able to do at the time. But yeah, we just couldn't get ourselves to get there with our current use case because our customers are very demanding. Like they're putting in multi-million dollar, and in some case, a vehicle is 1.5 billion start to finish. Multi-million dollar projects in our product, and they really need that reliability and consistency. And if we can't provide that across every hardware that we support, it makes it really painful to try and justify the development.
interesting. Very, very interesting. I love that response. So much to think about there. All right. So the final question I have sort of been thinking about today was, do you have any advice for other people looking to develop and build in this space?
Yeah, I first will just acknowledge everyone that has built and developed in this space. I feel like they are like the pioneers and we learn so much from them and hopefully they learn from us as well. And for those that aren't on the journey anymore, like really they contributed enormous amounts of hard work and effort and I would say like evangelization of the space, and we're so grateful of these individuals. And for those that are looking to jump into this space, let's say like immersive technology, AR, VR, XR, MR, whatever you want to call it, spatial computing. The most important thing I can say today is like really stay grounded in user needs. Like the only reason our company is around still is because we're so hyper focused on user needs. We're focused on frustrations. We're focused on workflows. We're focused on how to navigate as a normal human would be in the physical world, how you do that in the digital world. And so if you're not approaching it like that, or maybe like, I want to take the computer navigation and put into the spatial computer, I think that's really the wrong way to go about it. You have to make this experience worth it to the user, both from a workflow and an experience perspective. So I would say really stay grounded in that. The technology is going to be crazy, and it's going to grow. It's going to be so incredible, and you're going to want to do all these different things. Like I'm constantly, you know, impressed with what's coming out, but it's so hard to say no, but we have to say no. And I found that that's been our saving grace by saying no to things that we really
Mhm.
want just don't make sense to the user. The another thing is stay patient and be practical. Like spatial computing is so exciting. It's really going to evolve over time. The hardware is going to change, the platform's going to shift. But it's gonna take time because this isn't a technology that replaces something that's existing. Like a phone replaced the phone, the watch replaced the watch, the headphones replaced the headphones, even the laptop replaced the typewriter. This is a brand new paradigm for humans to interface with a computer. Like there's never really been an equivalent. I think like the smart glasses is probably the closest thing, but even then it's not obstructing your vision, right? So I think patience and really trying to understand where the space is going and grow with that space is really important. It means that like you're gonna have to adapt, you're gonna have to adjust. You have to have a long-term approach. We're lucky to be working with investors that have a long-term approach. And again, being humble enough to maybe wind down parts of your product that you are really excited about, but the timing might be not right. And then the last one is really around designing for accessibility. And I'll kind of cover this in a broader spectrum, but I feel like if it's really technical and you're asking the user to jump through hoops and hurdles, it's gonna be really hard to get them to map to this. There's already the biggest hurdle in the world, which is putting this thing over your eyes. And so make every moment after that a really enjoyable moment, a beneficial moment, a moment that really helps drive this impactful experience, but that stays persistent. And maybe even think about it as an ecosystem play with your own solution. So you want to get into the spatial computing space, you want to develop a product for the spatial computing, but maybe you also need to think about creating a web component, maybe also a mobile component for the phone or tablet. Easier ways for users to get engaged into your space without completely committing their vision to the device. I, it's I know it's counterintuitive maybe, but I've been in this space long enough to know that you know it is a big ask. I've done one-on-one training, one-on-one evangelization with customers and very big customers. And it's a tall order to get these things on people's face, but then also to get them to return to these devices as well. And so giving them other ways to get into the product is really important. And I think building with a sense of responsibility. This technology is going to shape the way that we operate and compute in the future. I really truly believe that. Now, I don't know if that future is in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. I'm not sure. But having this long term approach and also feeling like you are part of the development of the paradigm that's coming. So, whoever thought about pinch to zoom, for example, we're starting to define those types of user experiences and those types of standards right now with the tools that we're putting into our product, right? Whether it's wave your hands to scale or, pull a rope to move forward. Like these are all UX paradigms that we're going to have as a permanent part of our computing in the future. So I think really trying to approach it from that sense, and the way that I keep our team grounded, or I would say like our whole team stays grounded, we're all kind of all on this together and contributing, is by having a set of principles that we can work from, being physical with our interactions, keeping things simple, being language agnostic, and then really thinking about the way that the humans interact with the physical world and applying that to the digital space, but giving them superpowers in this digital space. Yeah, hopefully that's helpful. That's kind of the spiel I would give to anyone that wants to jump in. And also I'm also available to chat with anyone that's like really interested in the space. Like I said, we need more competition, and I don't even call them competitors. We need more companions on this journey.
Amazing. Thank you so much for this conversation. That's Shay Sosani, and you're the founder of Gravity Sketch on a very long journey to help creators of all kinds realize their vision in space around them. And thank you so much for the time today.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. Really appreciate it.